Beijing is facing the worst floods it has seen in decades. From the 23rd of July to 29, the capital endured 147 straight hours of rain, nearly 40% of its annual rainfall in 1 week. The result was catastrophic. 44 confirmed dead, 9 missing, and over 300,000 people affected, according to official figures. But eyewitnesses and online reports tell a darker story. Some claim over 100 bodies were recovered. Before we dive into all of this, let us know in the comments where you're watching this video from. Connecting with viewers across the world is a huge source of inspiration for us. The storm devastated the city's northern districts, with Miyun, Huairu, Pinggu, and Yanqing suffering the worst damage. But nowhere was the tragedy more gut-wrenching than Taishatun Elderly Care Center in Miyun, where 31 seniors drowned, unable to move as water rushed in. On the 28th of July, rescue crews reached the care home, but raging currents blocked entry. Of the 69 elderly residents, 55 were disabled or partially disabled. Only 8 staff were on site. By the time waters receded, what remained were 2-meter-high flood stains and a muddy handprint on the wall, believed to mark someone's final, desperate struggle. Survivor named Fu told China Youth Daily that he was knocked down by the water around 6 a.m. and escaped through a window with a caregiver's help. He waited 3 hours on the roof before firefighters arrived. Those who survived were mostly mobile seniors, who climbed onto chairs or windowsills. The rest didn't stand a chance. According to the Vision Times, officials later admitted the care facility was not included in Beijing's emergency evacuation plan, citing gaps in preparedness. The public's response was swift and furious. Netizens slammed Miyun officials as completely incompetent and demanded accountability after rescue efforts conclude. The outrage intensified as more facts emerged. On the 27th of July, the day before the care home flooded, at least 9 reservoirs discharged simultaneously, including Qinglong Gorge Reservoir Mianweiru border, 3 in Huairu, Beitaishang, Dashuiyu, 5 in Pinggu, Haizi, Shiyu, Huangyu, Yangyatai, Huaiyu. A Miyun reservoir employee confirmed that discharge volume surged from 80 to 200 m³s, then to 400 m³s without any public warning. Despite record rainfall, authorities failed to alert residents, unleashing a violent downstream surge that triggered flash floods, amplified devastation, and left the public in the dark. Beijing officials at a subsequent press conference avoided answering how many dams had failed, how many discharges occurred, or how many towns were buried under mud and debris. Entire mountain villages experienced landslides, road collapses, destroyed bridges, washed away vehicles and homes with up to 5 separate mudslides in some areas. The silence only fueled suspicion that critical data was being deliberately suppressed. By the 30th of July, Miyun was a disaster zone. Thick mud, crushed homes, blackouts, communication breakdowns, and bodies tangled in debris. Nearby in Huangyangku village, residents reported that a neglected, dilapidated reservoir collapsed without warning. Homes were obliterated. People vanished. In Hebei province, just across the border, Xinhua news agency confirmed 8 dead and 18 missing in Ludaohe town, Xinglong County. But volunteers on the ground revealed a deeper crisis. Duziu Township, with 7 villages and nearly 7,000 residents, had gone completely dark, no power, no signal, and no contact with officials. Its fate remains unknown. The township borders Pinggu, Beijing, and Jizhou Tianjin, both flooded epicenters in what state media has called the worst flooding in 70 years. And while the Taishatun care home tragedy made headlines, other institutions did not. A Beijing resident surnamed Li told the Epoch Times she saw orphanages entirely swept away. Only the care home was reported. Several orphanages over there were silenced. No one's allowed to talk about it. She added, guesthouses, farms, and small businesses in Miyun were basically all wiped out. Despite rising death tolls, Beijing authorities remained silent until after Xi Jinping and Premier Li Qiang made public references to major casualties on the 28th of July. Only on the 29th of July did officials release the number 30 deaths, and it wasn't until the 30th of July that the care home's 31 fatalities were confirmed. The 2-day delay triggered intense speculation. Mr. Zheng, speaking to the Epoch Times, echoed widespread skepticism. I don't believe the official numbers. No one does. In the 2021 Zhengzhou floods, they said only a few died until Premier Li Keqiang visited and the truth came out. Over 300 dead. This is no different. Media professional Miss Wang agreed, calling the government deliberately evasive. Xi Jinping never visits disaster zones. He won't go, and he won't let others go. Even during COVID, he spoke to Wuhan's frontline workers from hundreds of meters away. On a screen, he's completely disconnected. Every crisis shows it. She contrasted this year's silence with last year's Zhuozhou floods, which got wide coverage because they were protecting the prestigious Xiong'an area. This year, total blackout. You can't even find videos. People upload flood footage. Officials say it's AI generated. We all know that's false. This government is utterly inhumane. Not only does it ignore the victims, it opens dams to save cities by drowning villages. Political commentator Li Linyi concluded bluntly. The CCP doesn't disclose casualties to inform the public, it does so to protect power. Timing, numbers, everything is based on internal stability and political calculation. Eventually, they'll blame a few local officials, but in a real democracy, Xi Jinping, Li Qiang, and the CCP itself would have resigned long ago. But as outrage spread and questions mounted, attention turned to one central player behind the disaster's scale, the Miyun Reservoir, whose rare discharges have, throughout history, coincided with moments of national crisis. If you're still watching, comment 1 so I know you're still with me. 3 floods, 3 crises, what the Miyun Reservoir is trying to tell us. As for the Miyun Reservoir, since its completion, the reservoir has released water only 3 times each during a national crisis, and each time it sent a message louder than the flood itself. The threat of war. The first discharge came during the peak of Sino-Soviet tensions. With war looming, Marshal Lin Biao reportedly pointed at the Miyun Reservoir on a military map and warned, if the Soviets strike, one of their deadliest tactics would be blowing up this reservoir. The logic was chilling. Breach the dam, unleash billions of cubic meters of water down the Shabai River, and drown Beijing under 2 meters of floodwater. In response, the Chinese military declared top-level combat readiness, and the government ordered the reservoir completely drained, not for flood control, but as a preemptive defense against hydrological warfare. It was the reservoir's first release, and a stark signal of the era's geopolitical volatility. 1976. Earthquake aftershock. The second discharge followed the devastating Tangshan earthquake, which struck just 150 kilometers away. Though distant, the quake exposed a fatal flaw. The Miyun Dam's structural fragility. Built between 1958 and 1960, during the Great Leap Forward, the dam had been constructed with minimal equipment and mass manual labor, with an estimated 200,000 to 300,000 workers hauling materials by hand and building the dam without proper equipment. Though the scale was grand, the quality inevitably suffered. When seismic waves hit, the reservoir suffered massive landslides and near collapse, reportedly displacing tens of thousands of cubic meters of earth. Beijing was at risk again. The central government dispatched 2 divisions of engineering and railway troops. As they reinforced the dam, they simultaneously lowered the water level through emergency discharge, relieving pressure just in time. Their operation is widely credited with preventing catastrophe. 2025. The third time. Without warning. Now, the reservoir has released water again unannounced amid record rains, public confusion, and an eerily familiar silence from officials. The timing has triggered more than meteorological concern. The first release responded to external threat, the second to natural disaster, but what about this third one? With rumors swirl of Xi Jinping losing grip, with rising factional tension inside the party, and the country's leadership unusually quiet, many are asking, was this really just about flood control? Or is this a political act disguised as hydrological necessity, a diversion, a pressure valve, or a signal from a leadership on shaky ground? The Miyun Reservoir has long been considered the strategic shield of Beijing, but its discharges don't just move water, they move public perception. And this third event, lacking warning or transparency, has stirred widespread suspicion. In today's China, When facts are unclear and leadership is silent, symbolism speaks volumes. This flood may not just be submerging villages, it may be signaling a political fault line beneath the surface. And so, the question remains, this third flood, is it nature, or is it power leaking through the cracks? Born of fire, afraid of water, Xi Jinping's disappearing act during disasters sparks suspicion. A viral saying has taken hold in China's online forums. Xi has a fire fate and fears water most. What started as a tongue-in-cheek reference to folk astrology has morphed into a political lens through which many now view Xi Jinping's chronic absence during floods, and the pattern is impossible to ignore. Whenever water rises, Xi retreats. In 2020, when historic floods battered the Yangtze River basin, swamping Anhui, Jiangxi, and Hubei, Xi turned up in Jilin, far from the disaster zone. The timing sparked immediate backlash. Netizens accused him of intentionally keeping a safe physical distance. In 2021, deadly rains submerged Zhengzhou, killing dozens and displacing millions. According to official reports, Xi issued a written directive but never visited the scene, despite his usual image as a hands-on leader. By 2023, Beijing-Tianjin-Hebei flood unleashed northern China's worst rainfall in over a decade. The political optics couldn't have been clearer. The capital was drowning and Xi was nowhere. No visit. No photo op. Just silence. Some dubbed him a leader in absence. And from 2020 to 2024, it kept happening. Floods swept the country. Xi vanished from view. Online, the joke grew sharper. When the water comes, Xi evaporates. Astrology or avoidance? The fire fate theory. Beyond political analysis, Chinese metaphysics offers a different reading. In folk belief, Xi is said to be born of fire, a fate incompatible with water. Official records show Xi was born on the 15th of June, 1953, the fifth day of the fifth lunar month Duanwu Festival, or Dragon Boat Day. Traditionally viewed as inauspicious, this date is known for extreme yang energy symbolized in folklore as double poison. In Wu Xing, or five elements theory, Duanwu lands just before the summer solstice, when fire energy peaks. Fire represents power and rigidity. Water symbolizes wisdom, life, and adaptability. Fire and water clash. Astrologers argue this isn't just poetic metaphor, it's fate, with some claiming that Xi cannot be near water. The elements are at odds. Contact, ein vit disaster. A superstition with imperial echoes. Xi wouldn't be the first Chinese leader to fear the fifth day. Emperor Huizong of the Northern Song dynasty was also born on Duanwu but officially changed his birthday to the 10th of October to avoid bad omens. Lord Menchang, a Warring States statesman, shared the same birth date. Despite early glory, he died, disgraced, a cautionary tale still passed down. In Taiwan's metaphysical circles, the pattern is well studied. Experts warn that Duanwu-born rulers must lead with humility or risk destruction by their own nature. Xi's centralized power, cult of personality, and unyielding governance, they argue, are hallmarks of unchecked fire energy, which means power without water's balance. The flood Xi should fear most. Water can carry a boat, but it can also overturn it. History has proven that leaders who ignore suffering are swept away by public rage. No matter how fierce the fire, it cannot resist the tide of history. In the end, Xi Jinping's greatest threat may not be the floods he avoids, but the rising wave of discontent just beneath his feet. Temple of Heaven flooded is the regime facing doom. In the summer of 2023, torrential rains swept across northern China, and Beijing was hit by an extraordinary flood. But what captured the nation's attention wasn't just the rising water, it was where the water went. Both the Temple of Heaven and the Forbidden City, symbols of imperial power and divine legitimacy, were flooded. This wasn't just a weather anomaly. Within China's historical and cultural tradition, events like these carry profound symbolic weight. In dynastic history, the end of a regime is often marked by a convergence of catastrophes, floods, droughts, locusts, epidemics, and uprisings. Abnormalities in the heavens and earth were long considered clear signs that heaven no longer supported the ruler. History shows that this pattern is no coincidence. If you're still watching, comment 1 so I know you're still with me. In 1640, during the 13th year of Emperor Chongzhen's reign at the end of the Ming dynasty, records describe flooding inside Beijing's Meridian Gate, widespread inundation, locust plagues, and rising banditry. A year later, Chongzhen hanged himself on Coal Hill. The Ming dynasty fell. These events, recorded in the history of Ming, have since been interpreted as proof that heaven's mandate had ended. At the end of the Qing dynasty, around 1900, a similar convergence occurred. The Boxer Rebellion broke out alongside devastating floods. Draft history of Qing documents flooding across Henan that displaced millions, triggered chaos, and allowed foreign troops to invade Beijing. Empress Dowager Cixi fled west. These disasters dealt a fatal blow to Qing rule. Further back, during the Northern Song, poet Lu Yu described disasters in the Jianghuai region, uneven rainfall, rising banditry, and daily unrest culminating in the Jingkang incident and the southern retreat of the Song dynasty. The Zizhi Tongjian notes that in the final days of the Sui and early Tang dynasties, heavy and unrelenting rains north of the Yangtze destroyed crops and caused mass suffering. It was during this turmoil that Li Yuan rose to power and founded the Tang. The Book of the Later Han also recounts how, near the Eastern Han's collapse, consecutive years of floods washed away military defenses, displaced citizens, and gave rise to feuding warlords, poking frums to. These are not coincidences. They are the historical shadows of collapsing authority and cosmic warnings. Now, in 2025, both the Temple of Heaven and the Forbidden City have once again been struck by flooding. For those familiar with China's traditional political culture, the symbolism is inescapable and chilling. Is this the darkest moment yet for Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party? The Temple of Heaven was the sacred place where Ming and Qing emperors prayed to heaven, the physical site representing the divine legitimacy of their rule. The emperor, as the Son of Heaven, ruled not by popular vote or legal mandate, but by heaven's will. Each winter solstice, he would personally offer sacrifices there, symbolizing his role as the bridge between heaven and earth. In contrast, the Temple of Earth represented agriculture, livelihood, and the people's food supply. So, when the Temple of Heaven floods, it is deeply symbolic. Heaven's mandate is severed. The emperor's authority is unstable. The sacred has been defiled. This isn't just about religious order, it signals that heaven no longer favors the sitting ruler. For feng shui masters and folk watchers alike, this is known as an ominous sign of great misfortune. In fact, even before this incident occurred, feng shui masters from both Hong Kong and the mainland had already predicted that 2023 would mark a major decline in the CCP's fate. The flooding of the Temple of Heaven was seen as one of the signs indicating a turning point in its fortunes. Add to that the third ever discharge in the history of the Miyun Reservoir in 2025, an extremely rare event, and the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Floods and regime collapse often go hand in hand. Today, China faces economic decline, rising public anger, and a volatile political structure. Xi Jinping is rumored to be losing real power behind the scenes. International pressure is mounting. Domestic discontent is growing, especially among flood-hit communities. And now, even the symbolic seat of heaven's blessing has been breached by water. The implications extend far beyond disaster response. They strike at the heart of political legitimacy. And remember, within the Temple of Heaven stands the Echo Wall, famous for carrying voices along its curve. History doesn't repeat itself, but it echoes. So now the question is, could this flooding of the Temple of Heaven and the Forbidden City be the echo of the CCP's approaching end? That's all for today's episode. If you found this story insightful, share your thoughts in the comments section and let us know what you think about the topic. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Thanks for staying tuned. We'll see you next time.